This is Platemark. My name is Ann Shafer, and I am your host. I'm an independent curator specializing in prints and printmaking, and you have reached us at Series 3 of Platemark, in which I'm interviewing the wonderful people who occupy the print ecosystem. Today's guest is Kimberly Henrikson. She is the executive director of the Center for Contemporary Printmaking in Norwalk, Connecticut. She's an administrator, so has her hands in every single pie, but the Center for Contemporary Printmaking has a really rich program. They do artist residencies, they've got an apartment next to a studio, and they do classes and workshops, and you can become a member and rent the equipment and the space, and they have a master printer who can do contract printing. So they do it all. It was a fun conversation for us. I'm fascinated by the ability to handle all of those things, so I was eager to talk to her. Okay, let's see. I have a little housekeeping. My positionality. I identify as a cis-het white woman, and I use the pronouns she, her. I record Platemark in Baltimore, Maryland, the land of the Piscataway Conoy people. Any images that Kimberly and I talk about will be over on the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. Also, over on the website, you can find a microphone icon and leave me a voice message up to 60 seconds. You can ask me a question or leave a comment. That would be awesome. I'd love to hear from you. And there is a support and donate button. Click it to help us keep the lights on. There's two options. One, you can support Platemark on a monthly basis at $5, or you can donate a one-time self-determined amount. Okay, I think that's it. Buckle up and let's get rolling. Kimberly, it's so great to see you. Thank you for coming on Platemark. The first order of business is for you to introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them what you do and where you are.
Okay, so my name is Kimberly Henrikson, and I am the executive director at the Center for Contemporary Printmaking in Norwalk, Connecticut. I've been here for just over 5 years, since August of 2017, but the organization has been around for 27 years. And so while I am newer to it, it is probably more established and recognized organization out within the printmaking community.
Right. I grew up near there, and it wasn't there when I was a kid, obviously, because I'm much older than you. But but I think that one of the founding people is not the person whose name is on everything, but one of their friends is the mother of one of my high school friends, Mrs. Kiermeyer.
Constance Kiermeyer?
Yeah. Westport was always known as sort of the artsy community, and there was silver mine and some other things, but I don't remember that there was directly a printmaking element to it, although I wasn't paying attention as a kid, obviously. But it's so wonderful you're there. So tell everybody about the program. What do you guys offer there?
We offer a little bit of everything. So I liken CCP's offerings to kind of the full life cycle of what somebody could think about within printmaking. We have a public and free gallery that we actually have 2 different gallery spaces. We also offer workshops and instruction on different printmaking practices and associated processes. We have an artist membership option if people would like to come and use our studios and facilities. So you can sign up as an artist member, and we have multiple studios with different equipment in them. So if you move on from taking a workshop and you'd like to come and be hands-on yourself and come and continue to work, we have that space. We also have an artist in residence program. And so that is located in a separate building, but within our park area that has a quarterly application process. Yeah, so it's really kind of soup to nuts. We also will work with artists to realize a print project. We have printers on staff that can work independently with artists who are not members or associated with CCP.
So are the printers there working as contract? If I said I want to publish this thing, or are you guys publishers?
I suppose in a sense, yes, but in instances like that, when an artist wants to come and work with a printer on a project, while they are CCP's printers, it's the artist's project, I think, unless we are financially supporting that project. But if somebody just needs the collaboration and expertise of working with a printer, that's their own thing.
Cool. And the artist residency thing, I was poking around on the website, and it looks like there's housing. And I mean, how long can an artist be in residence?
The residency periods are usually 1 week to 2 weeks. The cottage that we have for the residency space is outfitted with its own private studio, which has two presses. Actually, our largest press is in the
Oh,
studio in the cottage.
wow.
And then it has actually a very nice kitchen and living room and bedroom. It's got a little patio out back and backyard. And you can completely be independent from the main building.
Wow. That sounds great. Is it hard to pick people? Like, how do you make those choices? Do you sit around a table and start flinging applications at each other? What happens?
We sit around a table. I don't think we do any flinging. Um, but we were just doing that earlier today because it is a quarterly application schedule. And so we were reviewing the applications just this morning. And yeah, we ask for an application form to be completed, a CV or a resume, and then samples of their work. And all of it gets taken into account. Also, some of it is about like who else during that residency period, like who else has applied. We can't take everyone. And that is a tough thing because there's so much interesting work out there and people doing different sorts of processes and, thinking in interesting ways about how to work with different materials, different
Right.
processes.
Do you try
Um,
and spread it out so that you hit, an etcher and a lithographer and a woodcut in the space of the quarter, or and do you try and hit, gender,
yeah.
racial balances, class balances? Like, is that a thing?
Oh, no, it's not so much like that. I think it's really on the strength of the work samples that are sent in. Also, I think the clarity of the proposal of what somebody wants to do. A couple of the biggest sticking points for us is, can you explain what it is that you're going to do during that time? Can you be clear in explaining what your proposal is? Does it appear that you have enough background to be able to complete it successfully? Like, we want people to be able to come out of this with a finished product that they're confident about, that they feel they had enough time, enough assistance if needed, and that they really were able to use the time and the cost of it, to their best advantage to make a positive project come out.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Although I have a friend who's was trained as an artist and who would say, when we're in art school and they start asking us to be able to write or say something about our work, that he always said, I became an artist because that's how I like to say things, and that asking me to then turn around and write about it is completely counterintuitive.
I mean, we do expect that there's some flexibility between what their intention is as described in the proposal and then how things may flow as they're here, or as they're really approaching the date and lining things up. um, but if it turns out that you can't really explain what you need, and we can't get a handle on what materials and supplies you need, certainly to make sure we have everything, or to know that within the budget that's provided for it, that it's going to fit within that. It's much more difficult for an organization to reserve that time and make the payments associated with it if it's the sort of thing that looks like it might balloon out of
Right.
control.
Or if it's an unformed idea, it's a waste of everyone's time, really, if they don't have direction. Or so that makes sense to
Right.
me. CCP is a nonprofit. Where does the support come from?
A lot of different places. It's the start of a new year, so we've ended 2022, and it was definitely a moment to look back and see how everything fit together. It's a nonprofit, so we do have fundraisers through the year. What is it? Giving
Mm,
Tuesday, just after Thanksgiving. We have a Fairfield County Giving Day I think it's the end of February, early March. We have an annual appeal, the envelopes that get mailed to everyone, or the emails that come out to ask if anybody's looking at their end of year giving, like, could they consider a gift to us? We have a big annual fundraiser as an event, which is the Monathon. And that is rather unusual. It's not solely a big party and auction. We also have a component to it that invites artists to come here during a week where we schedule 5-hour printmaking sessions, where artists are invited to come and make monotypes. And during that time, they may make up to 10 monotype prints. We select one to go into a silent auction, and then they may take home all the rest of
Oh,
them.
fun.
But so we're trying to include as many facets of our community into that event as possible. So having a way to involve printers and artists, as well as later the art enthusiasts and patrons in the community for the party event, which is often a greater part of that piece of the event. It's a really nice way of getting everybody together. But I will also say, like, the monothon as an idea is not something that CCP originated.
Oh,
That,
oh.
yeah. While we have been doing it for a long time, I think this last one was our 23rd. It's not something we just started doing. But our founder, Grace Ross Shanley, had gone to Santa Fe, New Mexico to meet with Ron Procrasso, who had started up the Monothon as a way of having a fundraiser and involving the printer and artist community. And so Grace and a friend of hers traveled to Santa Fe to track him down and to find out how he did this with the intention of bringing it to Connecticut. And he, I believe, just started returning to doing that this past fall. But we've definitely consistently had that in place for a couple of decades
Oh,
now.
that's great. Does the center have an endowment of, I mean, don't tell me what it is, obviously, but is there sort of a base upon which everything else rests?
We do have an endowment. It's not like a formal
Hmm.
endowment, but we do have an invested amount of funds that we use as a backup. But it's truly the just in case if we have to touch it sort of thing, because it's the sort of funding that it's not replenishing necessarily, and so we don't want to chip away at
Right.
it until it's gone. We do also have some strong and historic donors, so
Oh, that's, yes, everyone needs those. I
yeah.
think our listeners, I mean, I'm sure most of them have at least a inkling of an idea of how difficult a job like yours is, because I'm sure 75, if not more, percent of it is fundraising, and that it can be so patched together from all of these sources, but that if you have a leader like you who's, bound and determined to make this thing work because it's such a wonderful resource for people, that you should be up on a pedestal somewhere.
And amazingly, I would not say, or maybe I'm not realizing entirely how my time is spent, but 75% of my time feels like too
Okay,
much time,
good.
because there are just also generally administrative tasks that have to be done. Sometimes they're rather dry and boring things, but making sure payroll gets processed and approved, and working with choosing health insurance packages and doing the budget. It covers a lot of ground. And even getting into providing assistance and support for programs, whether it's exhibitions or the AIR program, or working through membership drive access and messaging and helping with social media. Like, there are a lot of different pieces that, for, I will say, an organization that has, like many nonprofits, like a small handful of people, we all wear many hats, and you kind of have to. Otherwise, if everybody's siloed into one place, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And the more integrated we are, the better we're able to put together, the work that we're doing in support of other areas.
Right.
So,
Are you an artist?
yeah. No.
True
Fair
confessions.
question. Fair question. I studied art history, and I am not a printer either. I will say the strength that I bring to the organization is administrative, and that I have worked for other organizations, including for-profit, completely unrelated organizations. I mentioned earlier I worked for a .com. Having insight into how things work within larger spaces when there are full departments to support people doing different things, that understanding of what aspects of the role fit into different areas, whether it's HR or staffing or finance or marketing or programming or fundraising, having a clear picture of that, so that you can divide your time and really try to figure out where to spend your time. I think that's been really, really helpful. So yeah, I studied art history, but
Nothing wrong with
I am
that,
not a
Kimberly.
practicing artist.
What was your area? If you had
So I was studying Klaus Oldenburg,
Oh gosh.
and I was working on my thesis for a graduate program looking at Klaus Oldenburg's lipstick ascending on caterpillar tracks from 1969, which is installed at Yale. That was his first large-scale outdoor sculpture.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so, yes,
Huh.
what I was arguing in my thesis was that it was this turning point between his earlier gallery space type of work, in canvas or in vinyl, and moving that to the outdoors. And the lipstick originally did have a vinyl red lipstick
Hmm.
that had a pump that pumped up out of it. Didn't last that long, but that was the original intention.
I assume he was commissioned to create that for Yale?
Not for Yale, but it was the architecture graduate students
Oh.
student group.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
It
interesting.
was a period of turmoil on campus, and I think between the students and the administration, concerns about spending and cost for students and housing viability. And so they commissioned this, and it was kept on the down low, but then there was a big push for people to come out to Beinecke Plaza on this day at this time, and there would be something to see. The president of the university was Kingman Brewster. He stayed in his office and not involved, and the sculpture was wheeled out and installed, and yeah, it was a production, but yeah, it was not at the behest of the university. In fact, there were a number of alumni who wrote to the president pushing back against it, like how awful it was, and if he would get rid of this. There was somebody who I I think he was offering like a donation or something if you would please get rid of this.
Oh God. He was holding his donation hostage.
I spent a lot of time going through the archives and the letters and things.
Oh,
So
wow. That's great. So where did you grow up?
I'm from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania,
Are you now?
southeastern PA. We have
Yeah.
Amish people.
Mm-hmm.
The easiest thing I can use to explain it for people of a certain generation, if you've seen the movie Witness with
Mm-hmm.
Harrison Ford and Kelly McGillis, that was filmed in my school district.
Oh,
Yes.
that was a great movie.
So really, truly within Amish country.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Lancaster's gorgeous. One of my first love affairs in art was with Charles Demuth, who's from Lancaster.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and so I have traversed the city looking for views that make sense in some of his works, and went into the House Museum that's on Queen or Prince. I forget
King.
which one. King, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's just Lancaster's just it's lovely. And if I had to live in Pennsylvania, that's where I'd go.
I loved it. And I actually still have an affinity to it. I feel a strong pull to Lancaster. Like my parents were both from there, my grandparents, like I still have family there, extended cousins. Like it is where my family is centered. But I think also it has this historic beauty to it it seems like the sort of place where you have the center square, you have buildings that feel like they are older Americana. Um, it has the oldest continuously operating farmers market in the country.
Is that right?
It is.
Oh, wow.
So go to Lancaster Central Market. That is that one. My grandmother used to talk about going to market with her aunt and having to wear gloves and make sure that you were put together for market day.
It's amazing how things change. I recently interviewed somebody who was involved in the very first New York Print Fair, and he sent me some snapshots to use for the episode. And everybody's in bow ties, and all the women are in skirts with little flats and pantyhose and stuff. And I can't quite imagine wandering around the print fairs in New York all dressed up.
I mean, I would wonder if they were on the hard cement floors.
All right, yeah. Well, it's
That is
that old.
hard on you.
Yeah, it's that gym floor in the old armory, but still hard.
Oh,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
So, how did you ever come across printmaking as a thing of interest?
Well, certainly as an art history student, I've always kept an eye out on the arts, and like I worked at a gallery on 57th and Madison when I came out of school. But it was actually when I worked for an organization called Art Store, which is a web-based image library, typically used for academic institutions and museum education departments, places like that. One of the institutions that was licensing it invited a group of people to come for an on-site training session to teach their faculty and librarians and visual resource curators how to use it. And I was one of those people who would travel to teach. And so, as it turns out, and I didn't realize it at the time, one of the people in attendance, she was a graduate from Penn State, and I'm a graduate of Penn State. So she and I were in touch about the Alumni Society board for that. And at the same time, she was also the vice president of the Print Club of New York.
Oh,
So um, through the course of some interconnectedness, I got involved with the Print Club of New York. And it's been a wonderful organization for me. I'm currently president.
are you? I didn't
Um,
know that.
yes, I am. It is a collectors group that the number of members each year is capped at 200.
Oh my
We
gosh.
commission a print from a notable artist each year. This year, the artist was Didier William.
Mm.
Last year was Kiki Smith. And so each person who's a member during that membership year receives one of the prints from the edition that the club has commissioned. But we also go to exhibitions. We schedule curator tours of shows, artist talks, studio visits, presentations, panel discussions. Going to the print fair, of course, is a highlight.
Hmm.
So yeah, there are a number of really wonderful things that happen through that. And one of the events was a tour of the Center for Contemporary Printmaking.
Oh. Uh-huh.
And so I had just recently moved out of New York City to Connecticut, and I thought, oh, I guess, yeah, I'm probably on that list of people they expect to sign up for that. So I guess I should really go and see, where this is. So I came here, and it's only about 15 minutes from where I live. And it was amazing to find a print studio and gallery and residencies, like everything so close to me. So I was very happy to meet the people here and came back and kept talking to people and, joined committees, and then got asked to be involved further and ended up on the board. Yeah, through being on the board, there was an soon to be opening for an executive director. And I threw my hat in and thought, I think I could do this. Um, and it was a big jump for me in responsibility and certainly experience. Like I had not been an executive director of an organization before. I had been in management. I've certainly been working since, oh my gosh, well, since I was 14. But through the course of the organizations to which I'd been a part, I had progressed up through to higher and higher levels of responsibility. And I thought that some of that experience, but certainly my organization and attention to detail and all sorts of things, should be a benefit to CCP. And if they were willing to give me a chance, I was willing to put in as much effort as I could to try and make a difference. So that's
Wow.
how I got here.
It's a great story. I mean, I have 2 kids who are recently out of college, and I keep saying, 85% of people, I don't know what the number is, but a huge number of people get the jobs because they have some connection or some in or whatever, and you're the perfect example of that. But congratulations. I hope it's your heart's desire and contentment there. Sounds great.
I love it. I mean, as much as there is a wide variety of disparate things that come my direction at any given moment that, you're turning on a dime to address, one thing for the fundraiser and another thing for like a pipe that's leaking, or, I mean, the activity level and community that we serve makes it well worth it and a good fit. I don't mind this at all. I'm happy to come in every day. I'm happy to see the people that I work with and the artist members. And, when people come in to look at the gallery and they ask questions, I'm happy to talk with them and find out who they are and tell them more and watch their eyes light up, and have kids groups here and watch the kids just ooh and ah as they walk around. I really love it.
Are you also the curator of the exhibitions program?
Some of them. And I say some of them because our summer exhibition is always a juried show.
Okay.
And so that one is either the miniature print competition or the footprint. So the content in those exhibitions is really driven by the juror and what their selections are. So that I don't have any input into. Our winter exhibition is our annual members show, and all the artist members are welcome to submit a print that will be included in the show. But then when it comes to the other seasons or the other exhibition openings, yes, that is something that I do. In some cases, it comes with help from other staff members, like Chris Shore, our master printer. Like if I'm pulling work from our archives or our history of projects that we've done, he has been here for 21 years. So, when we're trying to throw ideas out, like what we're looking for, he knows what to find, where they are, and we can put something really nice together. My definite solo exhibition myself, though, is the fall show each year. And that is always a group show on a theme that I come up with, and then go out and find work from either individual artists or from galleries representing them, and really go out and source it, bring it all together, and make that show happen. So
So
that's my
that's
favorite.
right. That's the show that is not drawn from the archive of CCP
Oh,
or members or
no,
right.
no. And the exhibition schedule is roughly seasonal. And we have 2 galleries. So the seasonal schedule is such that there's one in the summer, one in the fall, one in the winter, and 2 in the spring in the main gallery. And that's the summer show, which is the mini printer footprint, my fall themed show, winter members show, and then usually 2 smaller exhibitions, something closer to home or something that comes in that's already somewhat packaged. Like we're going to have Boston printmakers
Oh, cool.
here this coming spring. So I'm excited to see those prints hanging here at CCP. But then in thinking of having 2 gallery spaces, having something running in parallel on that same schedule. In the winter for the members show, we also have an exhibition that's a solo show of the artist who won the previous year's Members Show Best in Show Award. This year we have work by Linda Harrett, who is a Brooklyn artist, and she's showing in the parallel gallery to our main gallery. And then in the summer, starting just last year, I put together an exchange exhibition called Shop Swap, where our members will have prints swapped with another print studio, and we will then show the work by the other print studio at our gallery. And last year, we swapped prints with East London printmakers.
Oh, cool.
So my hope is to be able to have that as an opportunity for CCP member artists to be exhibited in other places, but also for us to be able to bring in work to show the diversity of printmaking that's going on in other studios and other places around the world.
Right. No, that's great. I would, when you started talking about the exchange, the swap, I never would have thought you would have said overseas somewhere, because that seems like an undertaking.
It's funny, as much as, some things do require some heavy lifting, especially to get started. I am really detail oriented and I live in spreadsheets and I love it. So as long as I can keep track of everything, we're good. And I'm happy to do it, and I will make it happen.
That's right. What was your fall show this year, your theme?
This year it was called Text Messages. And so it was work that featured text predominantly within the subject matter of the work. So I did have work here from Mel Bachner, from Shepard Fairey, from Robert Cottingham, Glenn Ligon, but also April Bay, Edie Overturf, and Ben Barris. So really spanning like the East Coast and the West Coast, with both early career artists and certainly much more established artists. As long as the work is of interest to me and it fits what I'm trying to get to, I am happy to recognize, celebrate, include whatever work it is by whatever artist it is.
Right.
So,
do you get to write something in a brochure or a catalog?
This year I had put together what turned into a zine, which was more like an essay on the exhibition, working through each of the different artists and even in a way pairing up some of the early career artists and what they're doing with how I see that similar approach to using text referenced by the work of maybe a more established artist. And so that little zine was a very fun new way of trying to put together prose, like lengthy written prose. So
Well, so some of my listeners, I'm sure, have made zines, but some of them probably don't know what we're talking about. Can you describe what that forum is?
Well, this was actually an idea that came from one of our staff members here, who is our media and communications coordinator. It was a single page document, I guess, just a single page that was cut and folded in a way that it turned into a little booklet. And so you could have something that was foldable and more of a readable booklet than a single sheet of paper, with a cover and a back and everything. But you could take it with you and feel like you didn't just walk off with yet another press release to sit and read.
So it ended up being paper without binding. So it was a folded.
Right.
Okay. In my mind, zines are often illustrated by somebody who's the maker usually is, got text but if you're putting forward art by other people, I want to see one is what I'm saying.
I don't have one. It's in the file for the exhibition.
You'll have to send me some pictures.
I will. We used actually, I think it was the Robert Cottingham typewriter image on the front for the Corona typewriter, because as a represented subject for language, that was such a nice thing to have as part of the exhibition, but also as a visual, the jumping off point, right, starting from like the initializing of words and thought.
Okay, so I have to circle back to the New York Print Club.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm fascinated at this idea of capping membership at 200. So it's like if you're in a choir and every year you have to audition again, right?
Oh, I mean, well, the thing is, we have an application process wanting to know like who wants to be a member. It's very manageable. I believe it's $250 a year. The cap on 200 is because when we commission the print from the artist, like we commission an edition of 200. We need to have a fixed number, and we
It's a
work with
lot.
these artists like 18 months to 2 years ahead.
Right.
So that's the boundary within which we know we have that we can give them.
Right.
It is a large edition.
It is a large
Um,
edition.
is a large edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, then each member receives one of those. But I mean, I will say we do have some slots open. It is the it is the Print Club of New York. You can find the application online. But yeah, it's been a really great group, and it's been around since 1991.
Is
And
that
I have to
right?
wonder what was going on in the 90s, because EP was also created in the 90s. These
Hmm.
groups of people who were really fascinated by and wanted to support printmaking and printmakers. So this is the Print Club of New York is a collectors group. Certainly the Center for Contemporary Printmaking is a printmaking studio and artist facility. But yeah, it's both sides of the coin. And I've really, really enjoyed the people, both here at CCP, who, I mean, we have membership overlaps between CCP members and Print Club of New York members, as
I'm
we're
sure.
all in the tri-state area.
Right, right. But so who gets to decide who is doing that year's edition for the club? Like, is there a
There's a
committee?
committee.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a committee within within the club.
Is that a committee? Everyone's like, I want to be on the committee. Or is that like a
There is a lot of interest in that
yeah?
one. Yes. But I think sometimes it's also about, do we have a way of getting in touch with an artist to even ask them? Like, we may want to ask an artist, but do you know how to reach them, to contact them through their gallery or dealer? Do they have the available time to do an edition of 200? Sometimes people have so many things coming up, if they're going to be at the Biennale or if they've got some big exhibition, that it may just not be the right time. So you ask, see what they say.
Is there a size limit on the yearly edition? Like, does it have to be, domestically, quote unquote, domestically sized?
No,
No. All
no.
right.
And
What's
the
the biggest
reason
one?
my face probably reflects the answer for that is that I remember, I think it was our 25th anniversary, Judy Pfaff agreed to
Mm.
do our print. And it's amazing. She did a print that was 60 inches wide.
Oh God.
Yes.
Oh no.
And it was such an interesting way to break apart the edition. Instead of doing an edition of 200 where every print in the edition of 200 was the same, she broke it apart into two different 100 print editions. So there was an A and a B. And yeah, it was curious.
That
Yes,
is
we have
curious.
not had that. There was a lot. It was, she did the hand inking. And I got the impression that as she was going through the process and realizing like what doing this for 200 prints was like, it was a lot.
Yeah.
But they're all, I would say, like in a way, a variable edition, because she had used the Sumi ink on the reverse side in order to print in white on the front
Oh
of the
wow.
paper.
Wow.
They're beautiful prints.
I'm sure.
They're large. And then we've had other artists who make something like very small. It's a varying edition each year. Like, there's no request to have it be a certain type or a certain type of artist or a style or, color or not color or like etching or litho or like whatever it might be. It's about an artist that we're interested in, work that we find interesting, and, something that we think would be a good addition and a positive representation for what the Print Club of New York supports. So
Right. Huh. Okay. My head is all a flutter here because we happen to be having a print fair in Baltimore in just 3 months.
yes,
And I'm going to send something to you and hope you'll send it to your membership and say, come on down.
yes. We are focused and centered on the New York City area, but we actually have members from all across the country.
I bet.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
the same, CCP has members all across the country, and I think we may even have a couple of international members as well.
Wow.
But certainly the densest body of membership comes from the tri-state area.
Right. Do you have a favorite edition from your time with the club that you have on your wall behind your, bed or whatever? I mean, I know it's
Well,
like
the Judy
Sophie's.
Pfaff is the one that is behind the bed. I need the
Okay.
space. But one of the other ones that I do also really love is the Faith Ringgold print. That one I have in my family room, and I love the color. I love the story. It has the text around it, like one of the story quilts. I really like the message behind it, and when you really read it and you think about it, like it has such power. And I just appreciate having that reminder and having that present in my day to day.
Yeah, that's something we talk about all the time, trying to get people to A, pay attention to prints, but B, think about becoming a collector by coming to a print fair, going to New York, whatever, is that um, they they might be on pieces of paper and seem like not substantial somehow, like a painting or a sculpture, but that they can certainly pack a punch, and that artists who love to work in print making understand that the inherent multiplicity, all that stuff that goes into why we all love prints, that it's democratic, quote unquote, and
Yeah.
less expensive because there's more and all that stuff. It's like when you meet another artist who is a printmaker, you just know that you have this shared sort of passion for message. And I don't know, I think, well, I always say print people are the nicest people. I'm always yelling into the wind, I think.
I love printmaking because it is so accessible. And certainly for me, being introduced to organizations associated with printmaking, I would say early in my career and life, it is the sort of artwork that I felt more comfortable with collecting. Uh, the price points are certainly easier for many of them. And for somebody who really believes in how special art is and to want to live with art in their life, like I can't afford some of the other major works that are, in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I want to have these messages, these ways of showing the world to me through an artist eye. And prints are wonderful for that. And the variability between different imagery and the way different processes give you different presentations. There's no one way to say, oh, that's a print. Like that's representative of a print.
Oh, right.
Um,
No. Mm-mm.
Prints are their own medium, but even within prints, there's so much variability. So you can get those unique looks at the world and expressions from different artists who really exploit that process and have that affinity to them. I love seeing what somebody can show me about the world through their art. And so, like, no, I can't get some of the bigger, more expensive things, but it doesn't have to be that. Like, you can find beautiful artwork or challenging artwork or just so nitty gritty, technically interesting artwork that captures your attention in an ongoing way. Every time you look at it, you see something different. And I want to have that around me. So yes, I am a collector, and
And you should be too.
you should be too.
That's right.
Um, but I mean, it's something I am not an artist. I can't do that. I don't have that in my skill set. And I am so respectful of those who can and have taken the time, the years, the education, the repeated practice to get to where they are. And I think through my work here at CCP, or even through the Print Club of New York, bringing in artists to talk to us, I'm happy to support them to make their practice work, like to provide that facility to them, because I think it's so worthwhile.
Yeah, the price point is often low, but even you or me buying a print from somebody is going to help. It's an all boats rise kind of like, it takes you to collect and them to make, like it's all, everybody's intertwined, and it's I don't know, I think it's a special place to be. So I'm going to stay here.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an ecosystem, and it's where CCP in many ways is kind of a zebra as a community print studio, because we cover so much ground in that we have the gallery and exhibition space. We offer workshops and educational programs. We have the studios available for artists to reserve and come in for member space. We have the residency cottage and a residency program, and we will, do print projects with outside artists. It really is a kind of soup to nuts, A to Z space. And I often do wonder, like, how many of us are there out there? I don't know that there are that many.
Yeah, I feel like there are places that do parts, but
Right.
yeah, no, you may. Oh God, is that right? I'll have to think about that. You may be a unicorn. But an ambition, like it's
Yeah.
ambitious to cover all that stuff, and I assume your staff is not gigantic. That's a lot to do.
Yeah. I mean, we have 4 full-time staff, including myself,
Oh boy.
and no, 3 part-timers.
Do you have volunteers? I assume you have some volunteers.
We do have some volunteers, but I will say one of the challenges that we do face is, and many organizations do, is trying to cultivate that new generation
Sure.
of, of volunteers, community members, artist members, like, the new faces that have to fill in and replenish the space that is vacated by, older, long time, patrons, artists who are moving on in their lives, retiring, moving away, whatever it might be. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been changing in an ongoing way, and certainly with COVID, the comfort level for different people coming in and doing things is also changing.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I that was a challenge the museum always talked about facing, was where does the next generation of audience come from? And from my end as a curator in the print department, I felt strongly that having classes come to see what's going on and how it works and everything was one of the best ways to at least get that idea in their heads, because I feel like, especially after COVID, like the whole way that my kids are navigating life is completely different than how I did, however many years ago. And I'm not that, I mean, I'm 50 years old, but they can't afford to move out yet. Like they don't have, it's everything's different. They don't want cars. They
yeah.
don't, if they don't have the resources that we did, volunteerism's probably at the bottom of their list.
Yes. And I think that is one of the important things for organizations to really confront, is that the economics of the present are not the same as they had been 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So expecting to find people who have a lot of free time and are willing to give it to you, or to do work without compensation or whatever it, however you're structured, that's just not a possibility.
No.
Um, we have we have a studio monitor program, and we exchange that time for hours in the studio,
Ah,
so that there is something that can be gained for them, like for the gift of their time that they're giving to us. What do we have? We have studio space. So
equipment.
yes, if you're
Yeah.
a printmaker and an artist, and you can give us your time to be here, we can facilitate giving you studio time.
No, that sounds like a good
Um,
deal. Are there
well,
are the colleges in, I'm trying to rack my brain. Are there any, well, Yale, I suppose, but they have their own facility. But are there smaller like Fairfield U or something that have studio programs but don't have printmaking facilities that make use of you guys?
no, no.
No.
I mean, from my understanding, there had been at one point there was an academic program that basically came here to teach a
Hmm.
class, but it's hard because the cost of it for us is greater than generally what the cost is for the institution to be able to like pay for all of that instruction. Cost is a real problem, and as a nonprofit, we don't have extra. We don't have days to offer to people and open it up and give it all the time.
Right.
So yeah, it's a matter of like wanting those relationships and those associations, but trying to find what is the best way to make it viable for us without like losing our shirts, and for
Right.
them to be able to provide like really something that they do need, that is of value, because nobody wants to waste the time, and that time may be their students or their faculty, but also like even our spaces, if the studio that we typically have available for our artist members to come and work in, if we have to close it down for a day, where's that balance for return?
Right. Of course. In your operation budget, in terms of supplies, what has shot up the most in this last kind of spike of inflation? Paper or ink or what? Blotting paper, which is expensive?
Yeah, I mean, paper certainly is always a challenge, but also part of it is the shipping cost.
Mhm.
Paper is heavy. And those sort of supporting infrastructure costs, as like postal service and other shippers, like as they increase their costs, that is also part of what ends up increasing our like retail cost in the end. I mean, other costs, like I've just been working through it in the last few days, like our web hosting, of all things.
What?
It was, I'll say like $520 was jumping up an extra $250 for this year.
Wow.
Yes. And so
That's a
this is
50%
where,
increase. That's crazy.
yes, that's what I thought. So, but I mean, this is where, in thinking about that 75% of my time spent on development, it's not like I have somebody on staff who is, my IT officer. Like that's on me. So, I'm doing the legwork to talk with, another person that we work with for technology solutions, and like how much hosting space do we have, and could we port this over, and how can we break apart our email, like that all is work that has to be done in order to make our operational needs get fulfilled. Like we have to be able to function in order
Right.
to do the programming elements that we have on the public facing side.
Right.
So all of that behind the scenes work is work. Um, and so yeah, like costs for all of the different pieces that we have, or a part on the furnace breaks,
Right.
and
Right.
you know, it's a piece that since COVID has materials in it that are hard to find. So now you can't buy those easily. And then, you have to wait, and it's, taken from somebody in Colorado has one. I mean,
Oh,
it's,
Jesus.
yeah. And then the shipping for like it,
Right.
the additional costs since COVID, a lot of them are in these like under the hood sort of infrastructure
Mhm.
sort of things.
Right. Oh, the challenges, my god. It's really ugh. But you do such a great I'm so proud of you.
Well, thank you. Well, but I mean, I feel like, as I was thinking about this conversation today, I was like, it's going to be so dry. I mean, who wants to hear about, postage, or, like cleaning out the eave, to make some storage space, to adjust seating for different staff members. I mean, this is not the exciting part of what you show about printmaking, but it's the underside of like getting it done so that people can come in here, so that people can have exhibitions and work in the studios, and that we can provide what we provide, so that the printmaking community can be radiant and do what they need to do.
Right. Yeah, I say all the time, like that the whole for me, the point of interviewing as wide a range of people as I can is to illustrate this fact that it takes all of us to keep this ecosystem going. And it ranges from professors to, people like you who are in charge of the administration of a complicated and robust and very busy and understaffed a printmaking facility in Norwalk, Connecticut. And hey, people don't want to listen to. I mean, I find it fascinating to know, like, I was at a smaller museum compared to other museums, but not as small as what you're describing. I think, if you're in a really big place, you only do that one thing you're hired to do, but the trade-off
Yeah.
is you don't ever get to, do exhibitions like you get to do of your own choosing. So there's a trade-off.
There are definite benefits to having, a number of outlets for your interests in a space like this.
Right.
But I would say it also is challenging in that you often want to do more. You want to be able to offer more. You want to expand out what's associated with, this or that. But constraints are often time and attention and the cost of doing it, or, staffing power, like what could be done in a larger organization that has more specific roles within it. Yeah, like I don't have a full marketing department. I don't have the IT staff to take care of all these other things for me, or like to call HR and be like, yeah, it's time for annual reviews. Can you schedule those with it? Like, oh, that,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel like every conversation is worth having for sure, no matter where it leads and what topics you'd cover. So, arts administration is a whole other avenue for people who are trying to get in the business, and it's certainly worth investigating. And it's, there are roles within the ecosystem that are suited to every person and every kind of personality. Like you and your spreadsheets and you would have been a great print curator back in the back cataloging with me, like minutia.
I'd be good at metadata and, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
cataloging
Right.
records and things. But I mean, it's the sort of thing that does help when applying for grants.
Uh-huh.
And they're asking for so much information, and to be able to know where to go and to call up all of this, it is excruciating, and takes a lot of time and writing and rewriting. It is something that falls well within, my scope of capacity.
All
So
right. Do you have a piece of advice that you give to people who come knock on your door and say, I'm graduating next spring and I'm looking for X, Y, and Z? Like what do you tell them?
it's funny, you actually alluded to it earlier when you were talking about your kids, because I also had served as president of the Alumni Society for Penn State's College of Arts and Architecture.
Oh gosh.
um, Many other hats I wear. But as part of that, at graduation, I was able to present to the new graduates, and in as much as I could address the interests of the Alumni Association, I also use that time to tell students, and even when I come back to talk to like the art history department, I do think it is like 80% of the success is through meeting people, talking to people, networking. You never know who it is that will be the contact that puts you in touch with somebody else that you might need down the road. I will also say, when there are events to go to, I mean, a lot of it is also showing up. Find out who the organizer is, make a point to go up and talk to them, even if it's just to say thank you. I'm having a great time. I'm so glad you did this, or we had this opportunity to get whatever it might be. Put yourself in front of people and repeat it. There are events that I know I went to over the years, and it turned out 10 years later, came across one of those people who remembered me, in a completely environment. It was not where we had met, but we crossed paths later. And that experience like strengthened that connection that we had later. You have to put yourself out there, and the opportunities are there. And it doesn't mean that it's going to work out for you immediately that night. You're going to come home with like a business card of somebody and they're going to give you a job the next day. Like that. It's not necessarily how it goes. but you definitely need to build those connections. And especially within the printmaking community, it is a small community. Everybody seems to know each other, or they know somebody who knows somebody else. So I would say, like, be present and just be mindful of the fact that everybody is part of this similarly shared ecosystem.
Hmm.
um, Help strengthen it. A rising tide raises all boats. Be
That's right.
there
Mm,
to make the difference. And
right.
if there's a need, like, put yourself out there. There's always something that can be done. We're often nonprofits or artists, and resources and help are always good.
Right. My piece of advice to young people is always to get over your fear of public speaking as fast as you
Mm,
can. Because
yeah.
in my line of work, it was, I mean, I talked for a living, talked every day, every single day, trying to describe and explain and whatever else. The sooner you're not nervous is the better.
Whether it's public speaking or even just being able to talk to somebody you've never met before,
Mhm,
being able to put yourself out there
mhm.
and introduce yourself, talk about, what you do or what your organization does, and to be able to have a conversation in person, not always on text or, by email. Like, yeah, go out to events and talk face to face.
Right.
Like, I will say, those one-to-one conversations, meeting people in person, are often so much more valuable than remote conversations. So,
When we've met for the first time in New York at the print fairs this fall, and I think I like told you my life story in the middle of that Gemini opening, and I walked away going, "God, geez, what? Shut up!" But
yeah.
we connected on many levels, and I followed up, and I was like, "You have to come on the podcast." So there you go.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I knew of you from within the print community, but we had never met. Like, our
Mm-mm.
paths had not crossed before.
Right,
And so, I mean, if I had just simply emailed you, or I don't even know what, like, would that have been as meaningful?
right.
Probably not.
No.
You don't have the space to make that personal connection and to develop the conversation, to understand, like, how somebody reacts, where to move, the topics that you'll talk about, and to find out personal information and our backgrounds and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, and I also feel like it's so much easier to gauge your like I felt like an instant connection to you when we started talking. Of course, I was blathering at you. I'm so sorry. But I
I had
just
a good time.
okay, good. But I just sort of felt like, yeah, this is somebody that I want to connect with because I felt like we had a similar sort of energy about, the print world, whatever else it was. And I was like, yeah, she's my kind of person.
I mean, you were building this podcast,
Hmm.
you know, as a resource, and, like, convening people, putting together topics that would be of interest, and doing something that is public facing and forward for the community is a really wonderful thing. And I mean, during the pandemic, in realizing that there were so many questions out there about, oh my gosh, how do you work in a studio with an artist? Collaborative printmaking is, like, very one-on-one. How do you do that with somebody when you're not sure if somebody could have COVID or not have COVID, and are they healthy? Are they worried? Am I worried? Is there enough air circulation? Like, how does this all work? I used the contacts that I had at the time within the print community to reach out to other executive directors and studio managers, and brought together people for, like, a weekly Zoom call, just
Hmm.
to share knowledge and find, any insights on materials or supplies or anything that we could talk amongst ourselves and try to get a handle on as a group. I mean, you put yourself out there when you see a need, something you can do, something you can contribute. And I really like that you do this podcast, as something that is unique to what you can bring to the community. And we all find these niches that allow us to, take hold of what we know, what we can do, and hopefully share that and make it a better place. At least that's what I'm trying to do.
Yes, I think you're well on your way. We're both doing it we're all both tides, rising boats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and printmaking is such a very specific art making practice. I want to see more people aware of it, understanding it, appreciating it. And I will say, I think even in the broader art making community, I don't know how many people really understand a lot about printmaking. Even when you talk to artists, when you talk to dealers, when you talk to curators, like it's not always something that is fully formed in their background of knowledge.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you don't know what's behind the curtain there, you couldn't possibly know how various all of the techniques. Like there's so much. It's not just pick up your watercolor brush. It's like 50,000 different ways of making things. Yeah.
There really are. There really are. I mean, and in thinking about like my understanding of printmaking from art history, not the strongest.
No, we talk about that all the time. I have not. There's so few schools that offer a history of prints, even. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating. But that's why we're here, talking, talking, talking.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, gonna share it all. All right. Well, thank you for talking to me. What's the message we want to get, that CCP is there, that there's artist residencies, and there's some slots left in the New York Print Club.
Yeah. The Print Club of New York does
Oh,
have
sorry.
space
Print Club.
available if anybody is interested. Center for Contemporary Printmaking is here and established in Norwalk. And we have studios, we have a gallery if you want to look at and take in printmaking. There was a residency program that people can apply to on a quarterly basis. So, whatever way would make sense and be meaningful to somebody in the printmaking community, there's probably a way to get involved.
I know you guys have a website, but should people follow your Instagram account? Is that a good way to sort of know what's going on? Or
Actually, social media, yeah,
yeah,
that's a good one.
okay.
It's Contemperance.
Contemperance with one P.
Contemperance. One P.
One P. That's
Yeah.
the key. One P.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. I'll put all of that in the show notes, and people can find it.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also our domain. So for our website, we try to stay consistent so as not to confuse anybody.
Yeah. So contemperance.org, not .com. It's an org. It's a nonprofit.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Great. All right.
Well,
Well, thank you.
you're welcome. Well, thank
Yeah.
you for having me on, and thank you for taking an interest in a community print shop and kind of those nuts and bolts of the administrative part of what we do here.
Yeah. No, I find it fascinating, and I'm sure others will too. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Platemark with Kimberly Henrikson. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Special thanks to her for being such a willing interviewee. As I said at the top, there are things over on the website, platemarkpodcast.com, that will be helpful for you. One will be any images that Kimberly and I talked about. They'll be there in the show notes. But also there is an icon on the website that is a little microphone. You can leave me a 60-second voicemail. Ask me a question, I dare you. And also there's a support and donate button, which will help us keep the lights on here at Platemark. It's a labor of love, and it's just me. So, I do it. I don't know if you know this, but I do it all. I do the editing. I do all the image searching, all of the caption, blah, 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 blah. I do it all. Anyway, why'd you help a girl out? Okay, we'll see you next time.